Today in Washington, President Biden will gather with foreign leaders to kick off this year's NATO summit, which marks the 75th anniversary of the alliance. And this evening will be an official opening event in the Mellon Auditorium, where the North Atlantic Treaty was originally signed back in 1949. The war in Ukraine will be a main focus of the meeting. White House officials tell NBC News President Biden and America's NATO allies will roll out a series of measures to bolster Ukraine's war machine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is set to attend, and one of Ukraine's most vocal supporters in NATO, the Prime Minister of Denmark, Mette Frederiksen, joins us now. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's good to have you on Morning Joe. Tell us what you hope will be accomplished in this 75th anniversary meeting of NATO.
First of all, good morning, and it's great to be here. I, of course, hope and I expect for different deliveries at this NATO summit. First of all, unity, transatlantic. NATO is the most important alliance for many of us countries, so unity. And secondly, commitment and deliveries for Ukraine. I think we have to stop talking about a war in Ukraine and start to talk about a war in Europe, because Russia has attacked not only Ukraine, but the entire world order that we have built since the Second World War. So unity and concrete deliveries, because you cannot win a war against Russia on your own. So we have to speed up and we have to scale up donations.
So, Madam Prime Minister, of course, the backdrop is this horrific attack that included the obliteration of a children's hospital in Kyiv that happened in the past 24 to 36 hours. You talk about complete delivery, scaling up and speeding up and having complete delivery to Ukraine. Delivery of what? What needs to be stepped up? What don't they have right now? Where do you think we could do better, NATO?
To be very frank, I think we can do better in many different areas, unfortunately. And I am very proud of everything we have been able to do collectively since the beginning of the war. But it's not enough. And that's my main message in US these days. It's not enough. When you're asking about concrete deliveries, where do we need to focus? It's, of course, on air defense. As you were just explaining, we have again seen attacks now on a children's hospital. I mean, how cruel can it be? And you cannot defend a country without air defense. So the most critical point is air defense. They have asked the Ukrainians for 7, 8 more systems, and we have only been able to deliver 2 from allies with Ukraine. So we need more air defense. We need more ammunition. And soon our F-16 fighters will be in the air in Ukraine, and of course that is also extremely important for them.
Prime Minister, we often talk about an Iron Dome over Israel, protecting Israel from missile attacks from Hamas and from other enemies. Why is it not possible for NATO to come together and do just that? I know President Zelensky has asked that question. Why can't that be done? Is it possible that perhaps we can move closer to that, where the skies over Ukraine will be protected from just savage, inhumane attacks like we saw yesterday?
But you're absolutely right. We have seen it just recently in Israel, what it means to have a air defense system that is actually functioning and working. And when you're asking me why are we not able to deliver what they need in Ukraine, there is no right answer to that question, because we have the systems. We have the systems in the US. We have the systems within European countries. And I think the General Secretary of NATO, Stoltenberg, was very clear already weeks ago, saying that it's better to have the air defense systems in Ukraine than to have them in other European countries. And we have I have to say we have the concrete numbers. We know exactly where they are placed. And just to give you an example, we decided many months ago to give our entire artillery system to Ukraine, because as a Danish government, we said, well, it's better used in Ukraine than it's used in Denmark. And we have to work in the same way of thinking when it comes to air defense. Of course, we need air defense systems in the rest of Europe as well. But we have to all the time to consider Ukraine as a part of the entire defense and deterrence of NATO and of Europe and US. So we have the systems. We have to deploy them, and it's very easy to deploy Patriot systems. So we have to deploy them to Ukraine, and it can be done if we have the political will. I hope that will be the very concrete result of this NATO summit in Washington.
Final question about how our NATO allies in Europe are looking at us, Americans. I often hear real concern about the upcoming elections, that President Trump was hostile to NATO. President Biden has been a big supporter of NATO. And now the fear that Donald Trump may be hostile again to NATO if he gets back into office. Is there anything NATO can do? Is there anything NATO countries can do to preserve the alliance, even if Donald Trump comes into office?
Well, first of all, I would like to say that I have worked both with President Trump and President Biden, and I am, as a European, extremely grateful about what the Americans have done with this war in Ukraine and in Europe. And when we are facing real challenges in Europe, we always ask you to help us, US. And it has been like that since the Second World War, and it will probably also be the case in the future. But when I'm listening to American presidents, not only Joe Biden, but also Trump, and actually also before Trump, they have all been putting the same message on the table for Europe. Europe, you have to do more on your own. You have to step up and you have to scale up. And you have to be able to defend yourself, and you have to be able to do more internationally. And to be very honest with you, they have all been right. I mean, when I became Prime Minister in Denmark, we were spending 1.3 on defense. Now we are spending 2.4. And this is not only about the war in Ukraine. Europe is a rich continent, and we cannot rely only on US. My strong hope and my strong belief is that US and Europe will always be connected with in NATO, with NATO, transatlantic. But at the same time, as Europeans, we have to be able to do more on our own with the US, but on our own. So I think that's the best way forward, to step up, to scale up, and to show the political willingness to protect not only ourselves, but all the things we believe in together, our common values.
Right, and I think most Americans would agree with that.
Yeah, Prime Minister of Denmark, Mette Frederiksen, thank you very much for coming on the show this morning.
Hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me, Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, Lawrence O'Donnell, Steve Kornacki, Joy Reid, and many more September 7th in Brooklyn, MSNBC Live Democracy 2024. Click on the link for ticket information. We will see you there.